This is the Detroit Pistons dancing usher. My name is Shannon. And when I'm not at the Palace, I'm listening to Detroit Sports Podcast. Log in, listen in, have some fun with us. Love this group. Love the station.
All I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
All day, every day.
Good morning, my neighbors!
That's why these two guys here, these are the men I want as my friends. They're the new blood.
It's that time of the week for the Detroit Sports Podcast. It's Thursday. It's another great day to talk about Detroit sports. We got a lot to get to on this 63rd episode. Joining me is my co-host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz? What's happening?
Were we not treated to something beautiful on Sunday? Was that not just incredible to watch those Lions sit there and pull off an unexpected victory against those New Orleans Saints?
Man, I would have been one of those fans after that interception to be like, F this and bolt out, and I would have missed a classic. It was a great all-around exciting game versus the Saints, and all in all, we're 5-2. It was one of those games that could be a defining moment for our Detroit Lions. I'm so excited to talk about it, among other things that we're going to get to. Definitely, we're going to talk about the Lions. We're going to talk about U of M versus MSU. We definitely got to touch on the Red Wings. It's that time of year. It's hockey season, so we're definitely going to hit on the Red Wings. We have lots of individuals that want to come on the podcast and share their thoughts and feelings. I love it. Again, this week we are jam-packed. We got Nate Webb from the Detroit Sports Nation. He's one of the Red Wings editors over there at the Detroit Sports Nation, and I'm curious to get his opinions regarding the start of the Red Wings season. If you're a fan of podcasts, you know them. Those Detroit guys have a great weekly podcast that comes out every Wednesday. We're going to talk to Gandy, one of the co-hosts. He's a passionate Lions fan, and he's a fellow Spartan alum, and we'll get a chance to talk to him about our Detroit Lions and the U of M versus Michigan State game. Another jam-packed podcast, cuz. You ready to kick the bad boy off?
Oh, I can't wait. Been looking forward to this all week.
The Lions right now are sitting 5-2. They're sitting pretty over there in London in their preparations for Sunday's early morning game versus the Atlanta Falcons, and they have a chance to go into the bye week 6-2. Overall, the game Sunday was kind of a microcosm of the season. Offensive line continued to struggle. The running game kind of took a step backwards because Joique Bell and Reggie Bush really had no lanes to run through. Matthew Stafford kind of didn't have a lot of time in those first three quarters to make passes, and you really noticed what the offense looks like without Calvin Johnson. It struggled a little bit until they finally decided, you know what, let's test this New Orleans Saints defense and throw deep. Once Stafford started letting loose a little bit and started throwing the ball, what do you know? Great things happened. New Orleans took a lot of defensive penalties, pass interference penalties. We got to move the ball downfield, and once Golden Tate took that pass, that 10-yard pass, and then ran it another 70 yards down the field, epic comeback, and the Lions are sitting pretty at 5-2, and they're keeping up with the Green Bay Packers. So how big a victory was this over the Saints, and do you think the momentum that we gained will carry us in the coming weeks?
I think this right here was basically one of those statement victories for this team. It's one of those little notches in their lipstick case. This win over a New Orleans Saints team, I know it's not a vintage New Orleans Saints team. It's not as good as it normally is. And I know Jimmy Graham's beat up, and I know that defense at points is just porous, but this is still one of the best offenses in the league. And this defense punched that offense in the face and basically helped win this game for this team. If you listen to any of the announcing that was going on during that game on Fox, They basically talked about how this Detroit Lions team wanted to turn this game over to that defense to help get that win. And you've seen it in that final drive that New Orleans had. They basically sat there and forced them into fourth down situations every time and finally came away with a giant turnover. They got them to turn the ball over on downs, took over, and then just had to take 2 knees, and the game was over. So I think this was a huge win, not just for this team as a whole, but for this defense. I think this offense still has some growing pains it's working through, but I think this defense, this is bravo. Bravo. Let's just say it. Bravo to this defense. The way those guys came out and the way those guys played, it's like they never flinched. Drew Brees just kept throwing the ball all over the place. That defense basically held tough, stood strong, stayed in there, and they either got to him and forced him off his spot, or the secondary sat there and was able to knock the ball down, or those linebackers were able to corral this offense. So I think this was a statement win for this team. I think this is high marks for them.
Now, you still have to look at the improvement of this football team. And so in order for the Lions to reach that ultimate success, they have to improve upon that offensive line, because right now the running game is non-existent. The offense is basically one-dimensional, which means they're very predictable. And when the defense can predict what you're doing, they can shrink the field. And as you saw early on, the Saints defense was able to limit the Lions' offensive plays on first and second downs, which led to a lot of third down plays. The Lions had difficulty converting regularly on third down, and then that's why you had so many possessions going back and forth early in that first half. So in order for the Lions to be able to become more effective on offense, they have to be able to establish the run, and they have to kind of find more creative ways on offense to move the ball and get first downs.
You want 2 telling stats about how bad this offensive line has been? Actually, I'll give you 3 offensive stats on how bad this offensive line has been. 1, Joique Bell led all rushers with 48 yards, which is abysmal.
What the hell is that about?
2, the Detroit Lions averaged 2.5 rushing yards per attempt, which is disgusting. And 3, Stafford has been sacked 22 times thus far this season, whereas last year he was only sacked 23 times. That is horrible. This offensive line is in shambles, and somehow they're still coming away with wins, which is great. As long as Stafford's not turning the ball over, I think this offense can help this Detroit Lions defense succeed, and I think this team can win. This offense has to figure it out, though, eventually. They can't keep playing this way.
Yeah, I just don't want the offense to continue to shoot themselves in the foot. The great thing is, I think when we started talking about the Lions this season, we said, can Matthew Stafford step it up? Can he improve? And he showed versus the Saints that he's a gamer. What is important is, early on in the first half, he had that horrendous interception. He rolled out and he didn't set his feet and he threw a ball into double coverage, which led to the Saints' first offensive touchdown. And I was very critical of that play in that early on in games, you need to set the tone early. And Matthew Stafford has to be able to make the throws and not turn the ball over. And so that's why the staff is kind of limiting him. But at the same time, you do have a guy that has a great weapon in his arm. And so it's going to be very important for the Lions offensive staff to find that right balance of letting Stafford throw, letting him do his thing, and at the same time, knowing that your defense can make stands, you let Stafford go a little bit more. Don't you think? Don't you think that they're kind of neutering Stafford and not letting him maybe reach his full potential? Because the guy can ball. The guy can make throws all over the field. It was so odd they went with the dink and dunk so early on in the game and didn't let it fly until the second half.
I really do think that they're trying to contain him, trying to control him a little bit. I think this is more to show him that he doesn't have to go out there and he doesn't have to throw those risky balls, throw that ball down the field. I think as the second half progresses, they're going to open that playbook up a little bit more. But I think right now it's just to try to contain him and try to show him that as long as you don't turn the ball over, we're going to win games. This defense is good enough, and we have a good enough system and scheme that we're going to win a few games. We don't need you to go out there and we don't need you to put up 6,000 yards per game, and we don't need you to throw into triple coverage and try to force the ball in there, which ends up leading to turnovers. I think probably the best play of that game was actually Stafford tackling Kenny Vaccaro as he was basically racing down the sideline. That saved the game for this team. And that interception wasn't necessarily his fault, but still, you got to put the ball where only your receivers can get it. You can't put it up for grabs like that. I know it went off the tight end's fingertips, and I know that was the first game that the tight end has played. His name escapes me right now, but you can't put the ball there. You can't do that. Even when they were sitting there pressuring to score, he threw a couple risky balls that were just a little bit too close for comfort. You can't do that, especially if you want to win against powerhouse teams. And like we said, the Saints are not what they used to be, but they are still a team that deserves and garners respect. And they're a very good team. They are lethal and they are potent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And you just can't sit there and you can't put the ball in a position where you're going to sit there and put your defense in a bad spot. This defense is good enough to where it's going to win them games. So Stafford has to be controlled, and he has to find that right balance, like you said, of where he can kind of go deep and open it up. And until then, he's just kind of got to dink and dunk and just move the ball around. But he's got to put the ball where only his receivers can get it. You can't turn the ball over. Not in this league. It doesn't work.
The important thing is the Lions continue to ride the momentum and go into the game versus the Atlanta Falcons and lay the hammer on them. I think that there's a chance Calvin Johnson could play. He is making, comments that his cuts and movements are getting to the point where it's pain-free. I don't know if it would behoove the Lions to just sit Calvin Johnson one more week so that way he can gain the benefit of resting going after the bye week. I think the Lions can be very competitive versus the Falcons, knowing that they have a chance of going 6-2 and really taking a stronghold in the division. I think Matt Ryan's going to have a chance to watch the film that the Lions showed versus the Saints, and he's going to have a chance to pick apart the defense. But if the defense can hold, they can get pressure on Matt Ryan, then they have a strong chance of walking away from that game with a victory. And I think I'm going to go on a limb, and I think that it's going to be a close game. I think that if Calvin Johnson plays, I think you have a chance of really showcasing.
Don't give it away. Save it for the pick'em.
Okay.
Save it for the pick'em.
Okay.
Don't give it away.
Okay. You startled me there.
I know. Don't give it away.
No, okay. I won't give it away, but I think that the Lions are going to be very competitive, and it'll be a great flight home.
You just gave it away.
We'll see.
You know what? I think you make some good points. I think in order for this Lions team to come away with a victory, coming home from London, I think that they're going to have to sit there and they're going to have to pressure Matt Ryan. They're going to have to get him off his spots, real similar to what they did with Drew Brees. And they're going to have to hit him. I think it's been proven time and time again. If you punch Matt Ryan in the face, he tends to back down a little bit, and he tends to kind of short arm those balls. He doesn't sit there and he doesn't put everything he's got onto him, and he doesn't throw a real clean pass if you hit him in the mouth. So I think if this defense can basically build this little nest and kind of collapse it in upon Matt Ryan, I think they have a real good shot to come away with a win here.
Because this is a great time of year. We're 5-2. Jim Caldwell, his attitude has obviously rubbed off on this team, and guys are stepping up. When guys go down, next man up. And it's just refreshing to see that we have maybe a chance to talk about the same new Lions going forward. And that was a good comment that a lot of people have made, is that this is the same new Lions, and that we make a mistake, we come back and we play better. And that game versus the Saints, I'm telling you, games like that can kick off a great season, and that can carry them for definitely a couple weeks. Because you got to remember, they've been doing this all without their number one offensive threat, and they're getting victories. So far, so good. Let's get Calvin Johnson back healthy. Let's get the offensive woes behind us. And offensive line, please protect Matthew Stafford. And let's continue to find that balance of having a great defense and having productive offense, which is so funny because when the season started, everyone was like, every expert, everyone that was talking, all of us were like, man, this defense is going to be horrid. How are teams in the NFL going to stop the Lions? And now what are you seeing? You got the Lions offense being the primary concern and the offensive line being the one area we need to improve upon.
I think we give it one more week, and then maybe we start talking about this offensive coordinator, and maybe it's him, maybe it's his scheme, maybe it's what he's trying to do. Maybe this playbook is maybe a little bit too deep, maybe it's a little too complex, but I think we give it another week and we see what these Lions can do, and then maybe we got to sit there and we got to take a little bit of a closer look at what Joe Lombardi's doing with this offensive line.
Let's keep this talk going. After the break, we're going to get a chance to have a conversation with Gandy from Those Detroit Guys podcast. Stay tuned. More Lions talk and talk about the U of M versus the Michigan State game coming up next.
I'm Megan McCormick out here in Fox Sports LA, and when I'm not sitting out in the sun, I'm listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast.
You got to check out their stuff. I mean, I'm really impressed by it. You guys have probably one of the better ones I've seen in the country.
Wow.
In a short period of time, you've done good work. Look at me kissing your hand.
I know.
All right, Detroit Sports Podcast listeners, we've been talking Lions. We've been having a good chat. Joining me on the line, you know him from Those Detroit Guys podcast. New shows come out every Wednesday. Gandy's on the line. What's going on tonight, Gandy?
Man, nothing much. Just getting prepared for the rest of the week. Looking forward to the big game in London. Not going, but looking forward to watching it.
I checked out your guys' Facebook video. You guys had a great time tailgating with the fans. Take us through your experience being at Sunday's game for the Lions' epic comeback.
Yeah, it was crazy. You know, it was all types of emotions, right? I try to not get too high, not to get too low, but of course that happens. You know, when you're watching the Lions game at Ford Field, it's full of energy. You know, now that we're definitely a great home team. First three quarters, the offense had its struggles, right? There's opportunities where we could have put points on the board, but in that last fourth quarter, in the last 4 or 5 minutes, like that Dallas game last year, the tide turned, and you just looked at the score and was like, man, do we really have time to get back? And when we won that game, I was just lost for words. I was spent energy-wise, emotionally. I just really couldn't put it together how we won that game. But good teams do it, and we did it.
At any point, did you and Irv consider, you know what, after the interception, let's just bust out of here?
No, man. There was fans in the stadium that left around 8 minutes, right? When we threw that pick, right? Like you're saying, fans took out. And we were kind of like, no, man, let's stick around. I had a couple of buddies in from out of town that never been to a Lions game. And I was like, we're going to get our money's worth. I don't like to walk out early. That's just not how I roll. And I knew, you know, with 8 minutes left, all we had to do was put 10 points on the board at that time. And I thought it was doable. And I'm like, there's no reason to walk out of the stadium.
Man, how valuable is Golden Tate to the Lions? I mean, he's a guy that is leading the league in yards after the catch. He's now become a player that Matthew Stafford can count on, and he makes big plays.
Matthew Stafford has found a gem in Golden Tate. Golden Tate is an invaluable asset at this point. Martin Mayhew, Jim Caldwell, the folks found this guy. They found the perfect receiver. He's been money in the bank for us. You know, we signed him that big deal in the offseason, 5 years, $31 million, averaging 6.2 a year. Most people did question the decision to sign Golden Tate. I didn't. You know, I knew what he brought to the table. Very fiery guy, very competitive. At this point, you dropped a great stat. He's number one in a lot of categories, especially on this team in terms of receptions and targets and yards, right? But he's also 6th in reception yards in the league. And some folks above him are running backs and top wide receivers in the league. He's definitely a guy that I like to see on this team. He reminds me of a Hines Ward, Steve Smith kind of fiery guy. Not the tallest, but he gets the job done. I mean, that $6.2 million he makes a year, he's easily worth, you know, a lot more. So we're definitely getting the good end of this equation here.
Yeah, and especially due to the fact, you know, Calvin Johnson has been out. We're still winning games, and we're sitting at 5-2. But at the same time, we got to look at some of the weaknesses. And right now, the offense for the Lions has become stagnant on some level. They're not putting together yet a full, complete 60-minute game. And when you look at it, you can tell right away there's a problem with the offensive line. What have you seen with that line, and what's been causing them so many problems?
Man, you know, I wish I knew. If I did, I probably could quit my day job, right? I could be a podcaster full time, a coach full time for the team. But I think injuries are definitely playing a big role. You know, Waddle's definitely having some issues this year. Has had some games. Corey Hilliard's out for the season. Age is also catching up. Dom's 35. Dom's not a young buck anymore. You know, last year he was graded the number 2 overall center in 2013 by some firm data, right? But this year he hasn't had a good year. Rob Sims has taken a little bit of a step back. He's still young. He's 30 years old, but had some procedures this summer on his knees. You know, he just got off to a good start. Larry Warford, I don't even know where he's at in some of these games. He's still in his stance on some plays. I guess he's not getting the snap count. I don't know if he's daydreaming, thinking about that record that him and Travis Swanson came out. I don't know. But Larry Warford and those three guys at center where we need to push for the run and to keep the pocket, we're really struggling right now. Riley Reif, he's done pretty well, but the rest of that line, the cohesion there as a unit is just not there this year like it was last year in 2013.
Yeah, you're right, Gandy. And what's worrisome is if Matthew Stafford can't stay upright, if he keeps getting sacked at this clip, he could be getting sacked over 40 times this year. Anytime the MVP of your team can get hurt, there's a big problem. So they better shore this up real quick. I
agree, because you can't look at Dan Orlovsky or Kellen Moore coming off the bench. So this O-line needs to shape up unless if they can't get this together, I honestly think the Lions need to go out and look to acquire somebody in the market. Need to make a trade. They need to upgrade maybe a free agent walking around out there that they can plug in for a few games because the Lions want to be a true contender. They're sitting 5-2 right now. They want to make it to the playoffs and contend. They need to shore up this offensive line, and I'm 100% in agreement with you.
The Lions right now are currently in London prepping for that game versus Atlanta. Rarely am I confident going into games saying I got a good feeling with the Lions, but Atlanta right now is struggling on so many fronts, and if the Lions defense can contain Matt Ryan, I'm almost certain that the Lions can come home 6-2 for, heading to the bye week.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I see a good shot for us to go out there and make some noise. Atlanta they struggled last week with Baltimore. Baltimore got after the quarterback, and in this league, if you can get after the quarterback, elite, middle of the pack, Tony Romo, whoever you want to be in this league, that quarterback, if they see pressure and feel pressure early, it's going to disrupt their game. They're not going to have a good game. And last week, constantly, Matt Ryan was pressured by defensive ends, linebackers. They were just getting after him. And, Atlanta didn't even score a touchdown into the fourth quarter. Joe Flacco threw 2 touchdowns, but still didn't even convert into any points. So, I'm excited, but you still have to be afraid of that tandem of Julio Jones and Roddy White. You definitely got some playmakers on the offense side of the ball. You got Derrick Rogers and you got Steven Jackson, not quite the Jackson from St. Louis, but the offense definitely has potential. But that defense, I haven't seen anything from them that scares me going into this weekend. We've played some really, really good teams to start the season on the defense side of the ball. So I hope that we can catch our form with our offense, start putting some points up. I want to see more than 30 points this week.
All right. We have on the line Gandy from Those Detroit Guys podcast. Definitely check them out. They drop a lot of knowledge, and they're Detroit guys. So definitely check them out. Subscribe to their podcast on iTunes. You are also a state grad. Aren't you excited for this week because Michigan State has a chance to really put a hurting on the Wolverines?
I'm very excited. I like yourself, I bleed green. Big fan. Followed them before college. Continue to do it even more. Now I have so much more passion for the team going to school there. I'm looking forward to this game, but I would wish Michigan was a little bit more competitive because it would help our strength of schedule and being able to bid for a top 4 spot and in the polls to get in that playoff. But we finally have the upper hand, 16-point favorite, 16 or 17-point favorite. That's huge. It's the first time I've ever seen that in my lifetime, and we were both confident in that Falcons game, but I think we're both even more confident in Michigan State on Saturday against U of M.
Yeah, I don't see now with the fact that, Michigan has injuries, their running back is down now for the entire year. I don't see them being competitive, and as you recall from last year, they didn't even score a touchdown. So it'll be great to see if Michigan State's defense can hold Michigan to 0 touchdowns again, and it's just exciting. The atmosphere is going to be great. Is there any scenario in which you could see Michigan winning unless Michigan State totally drops the ball and plays a terrible game?
Anybody can win in football, in my opinion, in NFL. In college, it's a little bit suspect, right? Different levels of talent. But in the division, in the Big Ten, there's a chance that Michigan can pull out a game of their lifetime and beat Michigan State. Do I think it will happen? No. I'm 99% confident Michigan State will win this game. Michigan has, a good defense, rush defense. They've been able to hold the 6th best rush defense in the nation. Michigan State's 7, just behind them. But Michigan State's played some pretty good running backs, and the Nebraska running back, Abdullah, Tevin Coleman from Indiana, Akeem Hunt from Purdue, definitely some stud running backs. So I'm excited to see our running back tandem go against Michigan's defense this week. We have 2 guys that I think I would give the edge on with Jeremy Langford and Nick Hill over, the 2 running backs at Michigan. But with Green being down, I think we have the upper hand from a running perspective. And I definitely think we are head above heels on Michigan in terms of a quarterback. Kind of Cook just outshined Devin Gardner on every aspect of the football game.
Now let's look at this. Should Michigan State run the table the rest of the year? Arguably their biggest test will be versus Ohio State. We have a strong chance of getting through, beating them. should we run the table? Do you think the committee, looking at the resume and looking at the strength of the Big Ten, will Michigan State be in the Final Four if they run the table and finish the year with one loss?
Well, I'll say this. If the committee goes off just our schedule in the Big Ten, will we get in the top four? I'd say no. At this point, it always turns into a popularity contest. They fall in love with the SEC schools. There's some good teams on there. There's also some bad teams. I personally have been on record with friends and said the SEC is not as deep as it's been in the past. You see teams like Mississippi State and Ole Miss at the top of the AP polls. Like, come on, those teams haven't been a good football team in years. So I think if Michigan State does get in that top four, they're going to need some help. They're going to need a loss from Florida State, Mississippi State, or Ole Miss. One of those teams are going to have to drop because I don't think we can get more votes than Alabama and Auburn. They're just too big of a football school, and we got to jump Oregon, who we lost to, and Notre Dame. So it's possible we can get in there. If a team in that top four loses one or two games, I think we can definitely make a move up. But that Ohio State game is going to be a big test. If we can beat Ohio State, I think that's going to make our resume look that much better. But we're still going to need a little help from the top. I don't have confidence that the board of the NCAA will vote us into the top four. But we'll see how it shapes up. As a Michigan State fan, us to finish where we finished last year, to be honest, I didn't think we were going to be that good. Finish with a Rose Bowl champion, Big Ten champion, in the top three team in the league last year.
I think that Michigan State should play a great game this week versus Michigan, and they should dominate. If they can get out there and dominate the rest of these teams and put up some good film, then we got a strong chance to get into that Final Four. And if we do, look out. I think we got a strong chance to get that momentum. I'll be super excited.
How's your cousin feel about the whole game this weekend? I know he's a Michigan guy. He's a Michigan fan. Is he a little nervous? Is he taking any bets? I might be calling for him.
No, he is hoping for a Michigan loss. It's killing him right now that Michigan has dipped to this level, and he just wants Hoke and Brandon out, and he is fully agitated. He's frustrated, and he wants no part of Michigan winning this game because any chance of Hoke staying, he's not for that. He wants to tear this whole thing up. He's angry, and he wants to get back to prominence. He's not looking to win the Big Ten. He's like, this is Michigan. His thought is Michigan should be winning national titles, and if Hoke's not the guy, he wants him out.
Hey, let's keep him there a couple more years for our sake. I'd like to get a couple more wins underneath our belt and let Dan Antonio pat his stats a little bit. We need to catch up in this overall record we've had since the 50s, since we joined the Big Ten. But thanks for having me on the show, man.
Anytime, Gandy. You're welcome here on the podcast anytime. I appreciate you calling in, and we'll definitely chat down the line regarding Detroit sports.
Look forward to it. Hey, and thanks again, and I'll talk to you guys. We'll talk next week on Twitter when Michigan State puts up at least 45 on Michigan.
Definitely check out Those Detroit Guys podcast. Comes out every Wednesday. They drop some serious knowledge every single week. Subscribe to their podcast, and we want to thank Gandy for coming on the Detroit Sports Podcast. All right, cuz, you heard what he said. Michigan State this week in a game that we've all been waiting for, a game that could potentially cement Michigan State as the premier college destination in the state of Michigan. Because Michigan has a lot to prove in this game. This game could be one of those games where if it gets out of hand, maybe Brady Hoke's final game at the head of the University of Michigan. Michigan State, I believe, is hungry and is looking to make waves in the college football committee. Right now, you have a lot of teams with one loss, and you have to impress the committee. With that said, Mark D'Antonio, if the Spartans get a lead, I don't think he's going to take his foot off the gas, and I don't think he should, because a lot of talk, I've read a lot of information this week about the committee. Do you understand that there's 5 power conferences and only 4 spots? That means a conference champion will be left out of the playoff.
I think you can say there's going to be at least 2 conference winners left out. The SEC is going to get at least 2 teams in there. So it'd be silly for D'Antonio not to keep his foot on the gas and not run up the score.
Exactly.
The few games ago, I don't know why he didn't do it.
You got to do things to impress the committee, which is very dangerous for Michigan in that can they keep up with Michigan State if they get rolling? And I don't think they can. I think Michigan State, with the combination of Langford and Hill, are going to pound the rock. They're going to establish early on the running game, and I think that once they get it rolling, once they get it in gear, there's no looking back, and I think we're looking at a rout coming up.
I totally agree with you. I don't think there's anything that Michigan can do to upset this Michigan State team. There is so much bad blood there that I think Michigan State just wants to take it out on Michigan every year and every chance they get. And there's been a lot of talk that Michigan State has popped Michigan so many times in the past that they're going to kind of look past them, and Michigan is such a bad program this year that they're going to sit there and not even worry about this game. I don't believe any of that. I think D'Antonio is going to have these guys so dialed in and so fired up for this game, they're going to come out and they're going to punch these Michigan Wolverines right in the mouth. And I don't think this game is going to last very long at all. I would be surprised if we get into the second quarter and it's still close. I expect Michigan State to come out firing on all cylinders and just roll over this Michigan team. Currently, the spread's at 17 points, and I see Michigan State just obliterating the 17-point spread. I see them winning by more than that. I don't think Michigan has anything on its team that can go head-to-head with this Michigan State offense or this Michigan State defense. I don't think there's any way that they can stop these Spartans. I really don't. Do you see this 17-point spread being even an issue going forward?
That's a tough one. If you say, can Michigan keep it within 17, I think as a betting man, I would take Michigan and the points, because I think that's kind of going to be the range that the game's going to be in. You know, last season, Michigan State put a hurting on them, and the key factor that some people need to recognize is that Michigan had a bye week. So they had an extra week to prepare, an extra week to watch the film, just like the Saints had versus the Lions. So they have an opportunity to get that extra film study in to establish a scheme that can stop the weapons of Michigan State. So with that, I'm thinking the game is going to be right around the 15-point range, because I do think that even though all of us are thinking it's going to be a blowout and there's a chance that Michigan State was going to want to run up the score if possible, I do think in rivalry games, Michigan is going to step up. I think that they're not going to go up to East Lansing and get romped, but I do think that it's going to be between a 2 and 3 touchdown game. So as a betting person, I would take the points. I like taking the points. But would I be surprised if Michigan State rolled Michigan? No, I wouldn't. So I just think that right now, in order for Michigan to win, every single player on the offensive and defensive unit has to play the game of their lives. Devin Gardner can't turn the ball over. He's going to have to find Funchess. He's going to have to find his tight end. He's going to have to find his, the running game is going to have to be more consistent. And the biggest thing, if Devin Gardner turns the ball over and gives Michigan State extra possessions, forget it. Then he should not be in the game. Because by now, as a fifth-year senior, he needs to really be showing that he has a command of the offense and a command of the program, which he hasn't done. And that's probably the biggest indictment that the fans of Michigan have towards Brady Hoke, is that the players are not improving. And so now this is the key game. Now, let's talk about this.
Wait, hold on. I think right there is the key point that you make. I know you talked about the scheme that Michigan's going to try to implement and that they've been working on it for 2 weeks. I just don't think they have the players to actually fulfill whatever scheme it is that they're going to try to implement to stop this Michigan State team. I don't think they have the guys. You said it yourself. Brady Hoke hasn't been able to coach these guys up and get these guys to where they need to be. They come in basically as 4-star recruits, and they're basically leaving as 2.5-star recruits. I don't think he's done a well enough job getting these guys to where they need to be to compete every week on a down-in, down-out basis. I just don't think they're good enough.
If the University of Michigan wins this game, they go to East Lansing, they play a great game, they have a great scheme, and should they pull it out, is this win alone enough for Brady Hoke to keep his job?
If I'm the athletic director, absolutely not. I need to see more. Just because you beat Penn State and just because you beat Michigan State, that's not enough for me. I need to see big-time wins, and you haven't proven, your track record over the last couple of years hasn't proven to me that you are able to sit there, get these young men in, and spit them out as grown men who are able to compete at high levels. Yes, you rise up for 1 or 2 games, and basically the whole back against the wall, and you're going to come out fighting and scratching. But that doesn't do it for me as an institution running this program. I need to see this on a regular basis, and I just don't get that with Brady Hoke. Now, if you're asking me, will Michigan point to this game and say, yes, This is a reason that we can keep him. We can build around this. We can work around this. Yes, you couple this with that Penn State win, and as long as they don't get shell-shocked by Ohio State, I think, yes, the regents at Michigan will point to this and say, here's a reason why we can keep this guy. He's a good guy. He runs a clean program, and look at what he did against Penn State. Look at what he did against Michigan State. And we didn't get really beat all that bad against Ohio State. I think they would point to that.
Earlier on in the week, I had put out a tweet regarding what could the potential headlines be on Sunday morning after the Michigan game. And I'll just read give a couple shout-outs to some of our followers on Twitter. We greatly appreciate it. You can follow us at Detroit Podcast. We are one of the premier sports communities in the area. We retweet the majority of posts that come to us. We want to build a sports community that interacts during games and talks about important issues. So some of the tweets that came in, Gary Dawson Jr. at JRGRD1228 tweeted us and said, Rolades anybody? Go Blue at Sean Rat Go Blue on Twitter gave us a couple. He tweeted out, Sparty Party, MSU blows out Michigan again, or Hoax job safe. Interesting in that people think, I think it's an interesting talking point in that this is one of the signature wins for Michigan. And I really kind of disagree with you. I think that if Michigan can go into Michigan State and win at East Lansing, a team that is projected to go to the national playoff, then I think that the momentum will carry him into next year, because a lot of people are in that community are saying that if you just give Brady Hoke one more year, you might have a chance to have a situation like in the NFL with Dallas. Dallas has given Garrett ample opportunity when many people said they should have blew him out with those consecutive 8-8, 8-8, 8-8 seasons. A lot of people within that room kind of feel like if you just give Brady Hoke one more year to instill what's going on, then you may see the fruits of his labor down the line.
But Brady Hoke has gotten exponentially worse every season since he's taken over, basically, which was Rich Rod's team, and they won the Sugar Bowl. On top of that, Michigan State is projected to get to this playoff because they have to go through this Big Ten, which is pretty easy and pretty simple. You're going up against the likes of Michigan, Indiana, and your really only competition is Ohio State, which has turned it around this season. You remember when they first started the year off, that was kind of looking like a gimme. Now that game has a little bit more luster and a little bit more shine for Michigan State if they can get by Michigan, which I think they will.
Okay, I'm just curious to see. Like I said, I think we're arguing a point that's probably not going to happen, but I'm kind of curious to see, does Michigan pick up their bootstraps and play a good game? I'd like to see a competitive game. I actually, I'm sitting here as a Sparty. We've dominated Michigan, and the tide has turned. I would like to see Michigan compete. But at the end of the day, I think Michigan State just has too many weapons at too many key spots, and I don't think that Michigan can step up. And it just kind of stinks for Michigan, too, in that you play your rival 2 years back-to-back at their home stadium. It's very interesting. It's just the way a quirk in the realignment of the schedule with the addition of the new teams in the Big Ten is that Michigan shows up to East Lansing 2 years in a row. Because I'm very curious to watch this game. I want to see how Michigan responds to one of the most adverse seasons they've ever had. And can they find some inspiration? As a fan that was featured on ESPN's My Wish segment, where they give individuals who are dealing with some significant health problems a dream of a lifetime. And the crew at ESPN went up to Michigan. The movement's called Chad Tough. He was featured on ESPN. And can they find some sorts of inspiration? Can Michigan, get that extra level of inspiration in order to beat Michigan State? I'm curious to see. That's why I love this week. This week is great. On Twitter, it's going to be great. The fans go back and forth. The hatred's there. It's one of those bitter rivals. No matter what fans of Michigan say, you may say that your rivalry is really with Ohio State, but in all honesty, your biggest rival is Michigan State. If you don't pay attention to your neighbors in East Lansing, you're going to fall to the wayside.
How much of an indictment is this on this Michigan program? Whereas a game like the Michigan State game was almost counted as a gimme. You expected to go either into East Lansing or have Michigan State come to Ann Arbor, and you expected a W. Now you're sitting there looking at this game, and you're like, this might be our statement game. This might be our rallying cry for the season. This game has taken on so much more now because Michigan can't get a win against the Spartans. It's just kind of ridiculous how the tables have now turned. Whereas Michigan State used to look to Michigan, look towards Ann Arbor and say, if we can just go in there and we can get a win, our season's going to turn around. And then if they would get a win, usually their season would just crumble because they put so much effort and energy into that game that there was just a giant letdown right after. And now Michigan is looking to East Lansing saying, if we can just get a W, maybe our head coach will save his job. Maybe we'll sit there and we'll turn our season around. Maybe we'll then be able to kind of hush up some of these people who are so negative about our program. It's just kind of, it's weird how they have basically exchanged shoes and now they're wearing each other's. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable that Michigan State has a strong running game, strong offensive line, strong defensive line, and a really premier defense. And it's just really continuity because that's just the way it is. Mark D'Antonio, once he came in, brought in Pat Narduzzi, and he's been a staple there at the university. And with that said, when you have continuity, you're able to instill your program, instill your schemes, and then you can bring in the talent to fit that scheme. And so Michigan just kind of got caught up. Once it was apparent that Lloyd Carr was going to leave the university, the follow-up plan was a mess. It just wasn't organized. With that, the way that the succession plan occurred for Michigan basically fractured the fan base, fractured the university, in that you had one faction that wanted Rich Rod and to move into that new kind of offense to kind of maybe take them to that national title level, and then you had the other set that were just like, we want a Michigan man, be damn it all, and so they didn't support him. And so right now, I think the biggest step is for the University of Michigan is bringing everybody on the same page, and don't fraction the university, don't go behind people's backs. And Rich Rod's talked about openly. He felt like there were individuals that were working against him at the university, and it just shows that maybe had they been more unified, Rich Rod could have been there, and you could have had a guy that could have brought you some success. Look for our tweets. We're definitely going to be tweeting during the game at Detroit Podcast. Feel free to message us. We welcome all opinions as long as you're respectful. We'll showcase it. No problems.
Even if you're not respectful, I'll sit there and still talk to you. Even if it's at 3 a.m. and you live in Arizona and you want to sit there and you want to berate me because you're a piece of garbage Michigan fan. It's cool.
All right, cuz. After the break, we're going to switch gears. We're going to definitely touch on the Red Wings. I'm looking forward to getting your opinions and getting your take so far on the Wings start to the 2014-2015 season. Stay tuned. Thanks, everyone, for downloading another episode of the podcast. We couldn't be able to do this without your support. Adam and I are grateful that individuals out there are downloading us, are subscribing to our podcast at iTunes, and are going to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can click through the banner links. We greatly appreciate it. If you go to Amazon and you shop there, click through our website and just bookmark it. That way, every time you shop at Amazon, they kick us back a little something, and it helps us pay our bills and stay afloat. Click through that Amazon banner, click through those links, and we greatly appreciate it. All right, cuz I know you're excited. I know you're chomping at the bit. It's our first opportunity to take a look at our Red Wings. Few games into the season, and we're looking good. I'm not going to lie. I think that the overall speed of the team has improved. The overall play has improved. There's still some areas, though, that need significant improvement, and we'll talk about that. But my early impressions are, wow, Gustav Nyquist really should have been on the roster starting last season. And for a guy that came in to the roster in November, he just has the scoring touch. And it's exciting to see another up-and-coming superstar that's on the Red Wings. And especially in a time when you're in that transitional phase from the Nick Lidstrom era, you're kind of going slowly but surely relieving the Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg. They're getting long in the tooth. So you're looking for that next wave of stars. And Gustav Nyquist has that scoring touch, and he's putting the biscuit in the basket, and has been a pleasure to watch. The one area, though, that's glaring for me that you can see right away, the power play. 0 for 10 in that weekend series versus Toronto. You're just having a really tough time in that they fall back into those same patterns. Pass the puck, turn it over, they can't keep it in the zone. Or they pass the puck, shoot the damn puck. Right now, the Red Wings power play is horrendous. I mean, around, the time we're talking about this, they're like 2 for 21 on the power play. So it's just not a good look. And I just think that they need to improve on the power play. Earlier in the week, Mike Babcock is looking at the young scoring line of last season and Tatar, Yurko, and Sheahan, and they're not really producing as much as they did last season. So he, earlier in the week, shook things up and inserted Nyquist, Tatar center, centering the line of Sheahan and Nyquist to try to kind of spark those guys by putting a player with the talent of Nyquist. He maybe wants to kind of spark Tatar and Sheahan. It's just interesting in that we are going to need these young players, and how patient can we be if they're not producing?
I think you don't have a choice but to be patient. I mean, you've got a guy that you went out and you re-signed in Dan Cleary, and he hasn't played one game. He's been a healthy scratch all season long so far. You don't have a choice. You have to be patient with these young kids. And I think a guy like Nyquist is the reason why you're patient with these young kids, because you see the talent that he has. You see what he brings. He's been a stud. He's been a star since he's basically come into the lineup and taken over a full-time position. He has been absolutely everything that you could ask for. And I think it's just a matter of time before Tatar kind of just eases into his position a little bit. I think he's a little bit uncomfortable right now. Last year, he looked very comfortable. The guy did great work, especially when he was teamed up with Nyquist. So I think it's just one of those things where give it a few more games. It's still very early in the season. What I am very impressed with, though, is something that was a hindrance for this team last year, and that was their penalty kill. They have a top-rated penalty kill right now in the league. Last year, it was just an albatross around their neck. They just gave up a ton of power play goals. And this year, they're just killing these off left and right. It's no big deal. On top of that, the goaltending looks solid. I don't think they've really played anybody who's kind of blown your doors off, but that goaltending has been solid. They're giving up less than a goal and a half per game, which in the new NHL, and I use finger quotes for the new NHL, is really, really good. That's outstanding. So I think this team has a lot to look forward to moving through the course of the season, and I think you have a lot to point to that are basically check pluses. So I think this team is set up in decent position. They have a few guys that I would like to see do a little bit more and contribute a little bit more, and they have a few guys where I'm scratching my head saying, why were they even brought back? Dan Cleary, Stephen Weiss. Like, I know why Stephen Weiss was brought back, but come on, you got to produce. You got to get out there. You got to do something. And these guys just aren't doing anything right now. I also think that this team has the chance to have a few multi-20-goal scorers on this team going forward. And that's something I want to watch for going forward as the season kind of progresses and unravels. I think there's a good possibility to basically have 4 20-goal scorers, whereas last season you only had Nyquist. I think you got Nyquist. Depending on the health of Datsuk and Zetterberg, those guys might put 20 up. I think Tatar might put 20 up. If Franzen can stay steady and stay consistent, he might put 20 up. So I think they have the scoring power. I think they just kind of have to figure it out. And I know that they haven't really been depositing the puck in the net at the pace that we would both like to see it. I think there's the possibility for it, though, moving forward.
There's a lot of interesting storylines that we can follow this year. It's going to be an exciting season.
There's a lot of optimism this year.
Yeah, and so early on, though, Johan Franzen kind of showing same old. Can put the puck in the net, but he's just dealing with an injury bug, and he can't stay healthy. I mean, what is it now? He's placed on short-term IR for a groin injury, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be a significant injury, but those things can linger. And it just really stinks because, as a fan, the organization made a choice between Marian Hossa and Johan Franzen, and they committed to him. And I just don't feel like I'm getting that return as much as I want, because when he's on the ice, he's a force, he's a beast. It's just that he's not consistent. And so we're going to get a chance to see how Stephen Weiss responds. How is he going to play when he's inserted in the lineup? He's, by all accounts, injury-free for the first time in a couple seasons. Can he be one of those guys that can consistently put the puck in the net and help ease the burden off of Nyquist? Because, yeah, Nyquist can carry his load. He can do what he can do. And I think with the leadership, I think there's a nice balance of veterans and young players. And so that's a good mix. And so then in the end, it boils down to goaltending and good play on defense. And so it's going to be exciting to see if the Wings can maintain that consistency and have a better season than they did last year. All right, we're going to continue the Wings talk. On the line, Nate Webb will join us from the Detroit Sports Nation, and he'll give us his thoughts on the Wings so far this season, and we always look forward to our chats with the writers from the Detroit Sports Nation. Stay with us.
Every time I go out, you know I got to show out. Every time I go out, you know I bring that dough out. Every time they go out, you know they bring that hoe out. Every time I go out, you know I bring that flow out.
Nate Webb from the Detroit Sports Nation is joining us on the Detroit Sports Podcast. Nate, how are you tonight?
Doing all right.
We are here talking Wings. It's the start of the 2014 season, and the Wings are playing pretty good hockey at this point in time. Just recently, Babcock decided to kind of mix up the lines a little bit, putting Gustav Nyquist in between, I believe, Sheahan and Tatar. Am I correct?
Yeah, he moved down to the second line.
What is your reaction to the early line shifting? Because, you know, last season they put up some goals, but early on, that young line with Yurko has been struggling.
I think it was a pretty good move. Datsuk belongs in the first line. I wouldn't really like to see him anywhere else. He needs to be playing with Zetterberg right now. And moving Nyquist down rounds out the lineup pretty nicely. He's been hot, and they want that scoring touch on the second line because they've not been doing well. Tatar has the only goal from that line so far. And that also moves Yurko down to the third line, who he's also not been playing very well. So hopefully playing with Helm and Nestrasil will get him going too.
One of the glaring weaknesses at the early part of the season has been the power play. I mean, it was obviously noticeable when you go 0 for 10 in the weekend series versus Toronto in the back-to-back games. Why have the Wings been struggling on the power play, and what do you think they need to do to kind of jolt the power play unit?
They make a lot of passes. They make some pretty plays every now and then, but they need to get back to playing simply on the power play.
Shoot the damn puck.
Get pucks to the net. They're not doing that really well. They hold it too often, and they're throwing it back to the blue line way too much. What they need to do is get the puck to the net and get bodies to the net. Garbage goals are still goals. They need to get as many of those as they can to at least get the power play working.
A lot of people have given the penalty kill unit a lot of credit, and they've done an admirable job. Do you attest that to the addition of Tony Granato on the bench?
Oh, yeah, he's done a fantastic job with the penalty kill. I mean, it was not bad by any stretch last season, but it has been phenomenal. So they're 18 for 18 on the season, which is best in the league. So, I mean, you have to give him credit for that.
Gustav Nyquist is a player that has a very high ceiling on this Red Wing team. Talk a little bit about your thoughts about Nyquist. What is the ceiling for this player who is making a name for himself early on this season?
I mean, he's been a big name amongst the fans for a couple of years. Everybody knew he was going to be at least a good player. They didn't think he was going to be anywhere near what he is now. But he's a catalyst, a lot like Helm. Though Helm is, he's a bottom six player. He's got a quick release when he gets into the zone, and his wheels are ridiculous when he gets on a breakaway. Those two things combined for a really good scoring player. Got a scorer's shot all day.
Now, Nate, last season the Wings only had one 20-goal scorer, Gustav Nyquist. Do you think they have more than one this season, and who would that include?
If they can stay healthy, could possibly have multiple 20-goal scorers at least. Nyquist could easily be on his way there. I mean, he's got 3 on the season. Zetterberg can easily reach that plateau. We've seen Datsuk do it before. If Weiss can get back to form, he can easily be a 20-goal scorer. Everyone's been talking about the conditioning that Franz's been doing over the offseason. He looks really good so far this season. He could easily be a 20 to 30-goal scorer by the end of the season if he stays consistent and if he stays healthy.
What is your opinion of the makeup of this team? Obviously, some of the fans were really highly upset at the fact that a lot of free agents chose to kind of diss the Wings, and they brought back Cleary, and they're kind of going with the youth movement, but a lot of the same faces as last year. Give us your opinion on the Wings this season, and how do you see the lineup in your opinion?
I like our lineup this season. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. They have a lot of speed. The youth we gained last season is invaluable. They make this team so much more rounded. They used to look at veterans for the experience they had, and it's just not working anymore because the game has gotten so much faster. And I don't know, I like the way the lineup looks this year. I feel like signing Cleary was kind of just a way for Holland to save face, but he does bring experience to the locker room even if he's not playing. I think if Weiss can get going, he could be a huge signing for us. But again, it's a matter of if he can stay healthy or not. But I think they can go really far this season as long as they stay consistent, because that's been a problem for them the last couple seasons.
So suffice it to say, you think that the Wings will extend the playoff streak and get there for the 24th consecutive season?
Oh, no question.
I think so too. Yeah, I think that this mix has a lot of potential for growth, and if they can gel at the right time, and obviously one of the keys is going to be goaltending. Jimmy Howard, catalyst, he moves the needle. You either love the guy or you think that, he should be out of the net. Do you think that Mrazek will be in goal next season, or will Jimmy Howard maintain his spot with his play this season?
I think their main priority was to get Mrazek up in the NHL full-time by next season. Most likely in a backup role. They signed Gustafsson for 1 year just to have him as a reliable backup while Mrazek was getting full playing time in Grand Rapids. But I do think we'll see Howard still the starter next season and Mrazek up as full-time backup.
Do you think Howard can get us to a Stanley Cup?
I think he can. If you look back, the playoffs against Chicago, we were one shot away from taking out the eventual champs. And he was phenomenal through both series. If he can keep in that form, we don't really have much to worry about.
Yeah, I just think that he needs to continue to work on his puck handling and consistency in the playoffs. Yeah, he makes a lot of saves, and he is an admirable goalie, but I just think that as Wings fans, we're spoiled, and that we're used to goaltenders that can potentially steal games and take us far into the playoffs. And so I'm not for certain how long this fan base is going to be patient with a guy like Howard, who hasn't even gotten us near the conference finals. So it'll be interesting to see. What is the one area that you think the Wings need to improve upon the most this season to help them advance a little bit further in the playoffs?
Definitely the power play right now. If you don't have special team scoring, you're not going to go very far, because everybody else, regardless of how good your penalty kill is, it's near impossible to have it be perfect through an entire season. You're going to have other teams scoring on their power plays, and you need to match that.
Now, I'll let you out of here on this. We have Nate Webb joining us from the Detroit Sports Nation. Check the guys out on Facebook and their website, DetroitSportsNation.com. Always great work. Mike Babcock has been with the Wings organization now. This is his 10th season, and a lot of talk has been, has he overstayed his welcome? Has he peaked? He got us that Stanley Cup. But for any coach staying in one location 10 years, it may be time for a change, and he may potentially, between him and himself, say, you know what, I've been at one spot 10 years. He may look elsewhere, but you never know. Right now, he's still under his contract. He's under contract with the Wings for 1 more year. By all accounts, him and Ken Holland, their families are close. Do you think Mike Babcock will be the head coach of the Red Wings next season?
I don't see Holland letting Babcock walk. He's the hottest commodity in the league right now as far as coaching staff goes. And he and his family are happy here. He's stated to the media that he likes being here. He wants to stay with this team, and he thinks that the team wants to keep him. So I think it just comes down to a matter of numbers, and I don't think the front office would skimp on his contract, for the sake of pinching pennies, because the guy's got 2 golds under his belt, a World Junior Championship. He's got a Stanley Cup with us. You don't let a coach like that walk.
Okay, but do you think that potentially, just in the nature of sports, that a guy who's been the coach for 10 years, that his voice may be, the impact of his coaching may be diminished with his prolonged stay here in Detroit?
That could be true in some cases. I think Babcock's style of coaching works. You've seen polls around the league where players have said that he's probably the best coach in the league and they'd all like to play under him. But then you also hear from the other side of the story that Babcock is too strict and he pushes players too much. But there have been multiple players that have said that if you want to play your best, you go and play from Mike Babcock. And I don't think that the organization would let him walk after all he's done.
Nate, I thank you for your time. You guys are always welcome here on the podcast. You want to talk hockey, we'll look to you guys, and hopefully the Wings have a successful season and continue the hot start. It's going to be a great ride.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. Great insight from Nate Webb. The guys at the Detroit Sports Nation, we're lucky we have a chance to collaborate with them. We get a chance to talk to their writers, get a lot of different opinions regarding all things Detroit sports. So support those that support us. And one of our biggest supporters is the Detroit Sports Nation. They feature us, and we can't say thank you enough. So check out their website, DetroitSportsNation.com. And if you listen to our podcasts, their writers have a great presence here. They're always welcome. All right, cuz I put a hurting on you last week in our Pick'em Challenge. I got 4 out of 5. Only got 1 pick wrong, and so I'm sitting pretty with a 19-17 lead, baby. All good.
I got some work to do here.
Man, the last week's NFL games were fun to watch. I got a chance to sit and watch, and I was very excited. Watched a lot of the games, and it's just great to be right in the middle of football season with all the storylines. Oh, I'm excited. And this Pick'em Challenge allows us to kind of have some fun in terms of our competition. So far, so good for me. I'm winning 19-17. I just wish I could turn it over to some fantasy success. Starting off 3-0 and going through a horrid 4-game losing streak. So I'm sitting at 3-4, as are you, and your team last week had a hard time breaking 40.
It did. Thank God for Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown.
You still lost, though, right? You're 3-4.
Oh yeah, I got destroyed. It was like 102-69. It was like a battle of the retards out there. It was bad.
All right. With my first pick, I'm gonna ride the hot hand. I think that I'm kind of sad. Kirk Cousins was shown the bench as he should have been. He struggled, and to add insult to injury, Colt McCoy goes in there, and boom, first pass, 73-yard touchdown. Oh, Kirk Cousins on the bench. The Redskins are starting McCoy at Dallas. That's going to be a nightmare. I just think that Dallas is going to be chomping at the bit. It's a division game, and with my first pick, I'm taking the Dallas Cowboys with a 2-touchdown or more victory over the Redskins.
Yeah, this pains me too, because I hate the Cowboys. But you can't deny what they're doing. They're running the ball at a clip that's not been seen ever in the NFL. They are destroying their opponents basically at will. And this Redskin team is just as big of a disaster as it was last year and the season before that. So I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys over Washington as well.
I like what San Diego has been doing. I think that they have a chance to go into Denver and keep the game close. Now, I'm not for certain if they can actually win the game, but I think 7.5 is kind of a large, 7.5 points is a large spread. So with my second pick, I'm taking the San Diego Chargers plus 7.5 at Denver.
I swear to God, you're looking at my sheet. I'm going San Diego too, plus 7.5.
You took them last week, though. They didn't.
I know, it didn't pan out.
Didn't pan out for you.
Did not. But I think the Broncos are coming off a short, emotional week, and I think that's going to kind of play into this. I don't know if San Diego gets the win, but I think they cover with the 7.5. I don't think Denver's going to sit there and run up the score like they were able to do on San Francisco. I think they're going to come out. They might be a little bit flat early on. I think San Diego has enough to where they can keep pace with the Broncos, and I'm going to go San Diego plus 7.5.
My third pick, I like what Baltimore's doing in the AFC North. I think they're right now in a groove on offense, and I think the Cincinnati Bengals are just a disarray on offense. Being shut out last week, they may want to come back and, they may put up a good performance, but I just don't think that they're going to have enough to keep up with Flacco and the Ravens. So with my third pick, I'm taking the Ravens on the road versus the Bengals.
All right, for my third and final pick, I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles plus 3 over the Cardinals. Eagles are going to travel to Arizona. They're coming off a bye. They basically had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. They're going to get their points. It seems like a no-brainer to me. I mean, they're going to score. I think the plus 3 just bodes well. They're rested. They're going to Arizona. I think they win.
Every week, we're forced to pick the Lions game due to Jock's rule for bonus 2 points. And so far, so good. We've done pretty well picking with the Lions. I'm going to stick with that this week. With my fourth pick, I'm picking the Lions. I'm fully confident that Matthew Stafford is going to play significantly better versus an Atlanta defense that is not that great. I think that if Matthew Stafford is given a little bit more time, he can run this offense and get the ball down the field. I think it's going to be a close game. This could be a very entertaining game going back and forth with the superstars on both sides of the field. You got Matt Ryan, who is definitely an established quarterback. He has the ability to make all the throws, and he can lead that team. But I think that the Lions are riding the momentum. I think they're going to want to show the entire league, and I think that they are motivated by their strong defensive ranking, and they're going to continue to show it. With my fourth pick, I'm going to take the Detroit Lions with a 3-point victory, 24-21, over the Atlanta Falcons.
I like where your head's at. Lions riding high after an emotional win last week over New Orleans. You sit there, you look at what's going on in the NFC North. They've got to keep pace with Green Bay. It's basically going to be them and Green Bay, I think, all the way down the stretch unless something bad happens to the Lions. Chicago's a complete dumpster fire right now. You got Brandon Marshall coming out, basically calling everybody out in that locker room. You've got the Vikings, who can't seem to muster a win, and they've got a rookie quarterback. So it's basically those two teams, those two giants in the NFC North. And I think the Lions are going to continue to sit there and keep pace with them and basically keep them at a distance, just keep them on their heels. You look at the Falcons are a disaster. They are a complete and utter dysfunctional product. This team was picked to go and actually do something this year, and they don't look like they can get out of their way. They've got one of the worst defenses. They've got one of the worst offenses. They can't run the ball to save their life. The only reason that they're ever in games is because Matt Ryan's arm hasn't fallen off yet. That's the only reason. They get behind early, and if they get behind early on this Lions team, it's curtains. It's lights out. I'm taking the Lions, riding high, coming home from London this weekend. Mark it, check it, put it in the book. Honolulu Blue Butter all over.
You got it. Great podcast, cuz. Another great week. We want to thank the guests that came on the podcast, Gandy and Nate Webb. We greatly appreciate their insights. Thank you to everyone downloading. Check us out on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. All things related to Detroit sports you can find at our website, and you can download us every single week, every Thursday. New episodes will be here. Check us out. Thank you for downloading. Tell a friend. Click through those banner links, and we want to thank you to all those that have been contributing. Next week, hopefully, we can connect with one of our favorite followers, one of our early contributors, a person that's been with us since the very beginning of this podcast and has shown us love, our fan, Detroit fan, David Smith at Detroit Sports Fan UK on Twitter is a big fan. He's in London. He'll be at the game, and we'll get a chance hopefully next week to recap the Lions' victory with a conversation with a fan.
I want live tweets from him.
We'll get a chance to recap the Lions game from a fan in London that will actually be there. Go Lions, put on a show for David. We greatly appreciate your support, David. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for all your contributions. We appreciate it.
Go Lions, go Wings, go Green.
Go Green, say what?
Hoax a joke. I'm a man of the people.
No? You're really weird.
Maybe you're the only, I hope you aren't the only guys who don't know.
Like, this is going to sound a little bit homo, but it's okay.
None of these guys do it for me.
Shoot the damn puck.